Three sisters, one mother, zero boundaries. Kathy Hilton, one of the most beloved women in Bravo history, once sold her little sisters their own belongings back to them while pocketing their acting money. Kim Richards was driving her drunk mother home from bars at 12 years old. And Kyle grew up being told she existed to land a rich man by the woman who was supposed to protect her. This is not the show. This is what happened before the cameras turned on. And in some ways, what's been happening ever since. The Richards sisters have given us 15 seasons of fights, feuds, and meltdowns. But the story the cameras never fully told starts with one woman, their mother, who some people in Hollywood quietly called the Madam, not because she ran a business, because she ran her daughters like one. This is the dark truth about the Richards sisters, and nobody talks about it until now. To understand the Richards sisters, you have to understand their mother. Kathleen Dugan, Avanzino, Richards Cat, and Fenton. 5 surnames, 4 husbands. One woman who rewrote the rules of manipulation in a way that would make a reality TV villain blush. Her nickname was Big Kathy, and the name was earned. Not just because her eldest daughter shared the same first name, but because Big Kathy had a bigger-than-L life presence, a bigger-than-average appetite for power and wealth, and a bigger shadow that still falls over every one of her daughters to this day. Let's start with how she got husband number 2, Ken Richards, the man who would father Kim and Kyle. Ken was already married when Big Kathy set her sights on him. According to Jerry Oppenheimer's bombshell biography, House of Hilton, she didn't just seduce him away from his wife. She allegedly drugged the woman at a bar, followed her to her car, and slammed the door on her ankle hard enough to put her in a cast for weeks. When Ken still hesitated to leave his wife, Big Kathy made the decision for him by getting pregnant with Kim. Once she had him, she showed him exactly who she was. She allegedly fed his elderly mother dog food. She's reported to have given Ken's daughter from his previous marriage a cheeseburger with a screw baked inside it. She was accused of trying to push Ken down a flight of stairs. Ken eventually packed up and left when Kyle was just 5 years old, leaving Big Kathy with 3 daughters, a mortgage, and a plan. But that plan was survival through wealth, and her daughters were the instruments of that survival. The philosophy Big Kathy installed in her girls was simple and brutal: marry rich, stay beautiful, and never be without resources. They reportedly cut off contact with Kim entirely, in the hope that removing enablement would force her to get real help. Kathy Hilton later said Kim had been spending time in Florida and was doing better. Kyle, with characteristic caution, said she was better than the last time there was stuff about her in the press. That's the kind of statement that tells you almost nothing while somehow telling you everything. Kim Richards is 61 years old. She was working by the time she was a toddler. A mother who viewed marriage and sexuality primarily as economic tools and passed that worldview wholesale to her children. Fire. She once bragged that her daughters were married to men who have a total net worth of $13 billion. That was Big Kathy's definition of success. Not happiness, not health. $13 billion, the most jaw-dropping detail. According to Oppenheimer's book, Big Kathy arranged for a young man to teach her eldest daughter, Kathy, who would go on to become Kathy Hilton, about sexual techniques in his van. Kathy was a teenager. Ken Richards was reportedly horrified, but Big Kathy told him flatly that Kathy was her daughter and it was none of his business. As for Kim, the middle daughter, the one who would become a successful child actress, she was being sent out at age 12 to drive the family car and pick her drunk mother up from bars. She was also expected to perform on command, to sing, to dance, watch to entertain whatever men Big Kathy brought home. Kim's ex-boyfriend told Radar Online that Big Kathy only had money and men on her brain, and that she would make Kim perform for random guests like a trained act. This is the origin story. This is the soil these 3 women grew up in. Kim Richards didn't choose show business. Her mother chose it for her. Kim was pushed into acting as practically a toddler, and by the time she was a teenager, she was one of the most recognizable child actresses in America, starring in Little House on the Prairie alongside Melissa Gilbert, appearing in Witch Mountain films, and bringing in real adult money. Kyle followed her into the industry, and Kathy, 7 years older, already graduated from Big Kathy's household, watched from the sidelines. Here's where it gets interesting. At the 2025 BravoCon held in November 2025, Kathy Hilton sat on stage and actually admitted what she used to do to her little sisters. She confessed that she would take expensive items from around the house, crystals, decorative pieces, anything of value, put them in her room, and then sell them back to Kim and Kyle. Why could she do this? Because the two younger girls were earning unemployment checks from their acting jobs and squirreling the money away. Kathy knew where it was hidden, and she exploited that knowledge. The audience laughed. Kathy framed it as a cheeky sibling story. But let that sink in for a second. A teenager was systematically extracting money from her child actress sisters by running a shadow economy inside their family home. This is the dynamic, Kathy as the one who takes. Kyle, as the one who watches and resents. Kim is the one who's exploited. And it never really stopped. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Les on Little House on the Prairie, told Andy Cohen Live in 2022 that she was close friends with Kim and Kyle during those years. She talked about slumber parties and genuine friendship. But even Gilbert admitted that once Kathy turned 18, she became Kyle's set sitter, meaning Kathy was essentially being paid or compensated in some way to babysit Kyle on set. The labor structure of the Richards household was deeply embedded in the girls' professional lives, too. Kim earned. Kyle earned. Kathy supervised and took her cut. This is also where the house story begins. Big Kathy's final husband, Bob Fenton, was allegedly convinced to sell his home and invest the $250,000 in proceeds into renovating Big Kathy's Palm Springs property. When Big Kathy died in 2002 from breast cancer, her will left the house to her daughters and gave Bob 1 year to move out of the property he'd helped pay for. The four walls that Bob funded became the inheritance the sisters would fight over for decades. In Season 1 of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Kim famously screamed at Kyle from the back of a limousine that Kyle had stolen my house, a house she shared with her sisters, a house tied to their mother's complicated legacy. Kyle responded by outing Kim as an alcoholic on national television, claiming their mother had died worrying about Kim's drinking. It was one of the most explosive moments in reality TV history, and it was the logical conclusion of a family that had never learned to process pain quietly. For the uninitiated, in 2022, during the Season 12 cast trip to Aspen on RHBH, Kathy Hilton allegedly had what castmate Lisa Rinna described as an absolute meltdown. The cameras weren't rolling for the most explosive part. There's still no footage, and that fact alone has kept the story alive and suspicious ever since. Here's what we know. The group was at the Caribou Club. Kathy apparently asked the DJ to play Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. The DJ refused. Something snapped. Kathy went from making an uncomfortable scene at the club to allegedly losing control entirely. When she and Rinna left together in a Sprinter van, Rinna later claimed Kathy unleashed a torrent of threats and personal attacks that left her shaken to her core. According to Rinna's account, corroborated in part by castmate Sutton Straw, who witnessed the early stages at the club, Kathy declared she would take down NBC, take down Bravo, that she would ruin everyone, and specifically allegedly turned on her own sister, saying she made Kyle and would destroy Kyle and her family if it's the last thing she ever does. Mauricio Umansky, Kyle's then-husband, told Watch What Happens Lev that he had gone to bed but was woken up in the early morning hours to find Rinna as a sheet and visibly traumatized. He confirmed the night was very intense, without question, even though he didn't witness the worst of it himself. Kathy's side, she was venting. She felt misunderstood, and she denied using specific slurs or making the threats Rinna attributed to her. I don't even talk like that, she told Variety. She acknowledged she said some pretty strong things, but insisted the story was weaponized against her. Here's what's been revealed as recently as February 2026, just days before this was written. Lisa Rinna's memoir, You Better Believe I'm Going to Talk About It, contains fresh claims about Aspen. Rinna alleges that the Hilton machine spent years trying to keep Kathy's behavior hidden. She claims Kathy brought a high-powered publicist, Andy Gelb, to the Season 12 reunion and that Bravo and Andy Cohen essentially shielded Kathy from the full consequences of what happened. Rinna claims she witnessed bad behavior over the course of filming that entire season, not just that one night. The implication is significant that Kathy Hilton's public image as a lovable, de-eccentric fan favorite was cultivated deliberately, protected by powerful people, and that the cameras on RHOB, the cameras supposedly capturing everything, were successfully maneuvered around when it mattered most. Whether you believe Raina or Kathy, the fact remains a woman with enough power and connections was able to ensure that the most damaging moments of a reality television trip never made it to air. That is its own kind of dark truth. Of the three sisters, Kim's story is the most heartbreaking and the most mishandled by the people around her. Kim Richards was pushed into an industry she didn't fully choose at an age when she couldn't consent to what that life would cost her. She carried the weight of the family's finances as a child. She was compared constantly to her sisters by her mother. Oh, she entered her first marriage to George Brynans at 19 and pregnant while allegedly being pressured by Big Kathy to date a billionaire named John Davis at the same time. She had 4 children across 3 relationships and multiple divorces. By the time Real Housewives cameras found her, she was already fighting a battle most of the audience didn't yet understand. In Season 1's infamous limo scene, Kyle screamed what the family had been carefully keeping quiet. That Kim was an alcoholic. It was the kind of secret that everyone in the family knew and no one talked about. Kyle let it out in fury mid-argument, and the moment went down in Re as simultaneously iconic and profoundly cruel. Kim went to rehab. She claimed sobriety. She came back for more seasons, and then in 2015 she relapsed. Or she was arrested at the Beverly Hills Hotel on Easter Sunday, charged with public intoxication and battery of a police officer. It was ugly, it was public, and it happened during filming. But the most recent chapter is the one that's been least reported, perhaps because it's the hardest to watch. In September 2024, Kim was placed on a 5150 psychiatric hold after displaying concerning behavior at a Hilton hotel in Los Angeles. The family was called. Kyle was there when police arrived and asked Kim to leave. Kim was taken by ambulance. At the same time, reports emerged that Kim had been living in a house owned by Kyle in Enino, a house she had been asked to vacate, and had been showing up there even after she was supposed to have moved out. Neighbors were so alarmed by her behavior that they called law enforcement. The family made a decision that looked harsh from the outside and was reported widely as tough love. She was responsible for her alcoholic mother's safety at age 12. She was used, compared, and commodified. And now, decades later, the cameras are gone, and the safety net is thin. For 15 seasons, Kyle Richards was the anchor of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, the constant, the woman who started every season opener, who gave the famous toast, who played peacemaker between warring castmates while barely holding her own family together. But in 2023, the facade finally cracked. Not because of drama with castmates, but because of her own marriage. Kyle and Mauricio Umansky, married since 1996, announced they had separated. For a woman who had built her entire brand around her family and her marriage, it was seismic. What followed was a slow, painful, and very public reckoning with who Kyle Richards actually is outside the role she'd been performing her whole life. She admitted on camera that she fell hard for someone during her separation, someone she cared about deeply, someone who was private and didn't want to be part of the show. She never said the name, she never confirmed the gender. But the internet, watching closely, had already connected the dots. Country singer Morgan Wade, who got a K tattoo, who appeared in Kyle's social media constantly, who Kyle starred alongside in a music video, was almost certainly that person. By December 2025, Kyle was finally on camera, acknowledging it without fully acknowledging it, telling co-star Erika Jayne that the relationship ended because of all the speculation and the gossip and the talking. The constant scrutiny that comes with being a housewife killed the relationship. Kyle was caught between honesty, her stated value, and protection, what her partner needed. She chose protection and lost the relationship anyway. In March 2024, on the Kelly Riapa podcast, Kyle spoke candidly about her childhood, about how her mother constantly compared the 3 sisters to each other. I do remember her saying, "Why don't you do this like so-and-so to Kim? Why don't you do what Kyle does?" She described the competition Big Kathy fostered between her daughters not as malicious exactly, but as a defining wound. The woman who spent 15 seasons on television being everyone else's emotional support was herself the product of a home where she could never be enough, and where being the good one simply meant not being Kim. As of early 2026, Kyle's divorce from Mauricio has still not been finalized. Neither has filed. The financial entanglement, his real estate empire, her entertainment brand reportedly makes uncoupling extraordinarily complex. Kyle is now on season 15 of RHOBH, navigating single life in her 50s and describing herself as no longer afraid of being alone. Whether that's growth or a very polished performance is at this point almost impossible to tell. Kathy Hilton has always occupied a strange position in the Richards-sister dynamic. She's the eldest. She's the half-sister, a different father, a different upbringing in her earliest years. For over a decade before being convinced to join the show herself on RHOB, Kathy was an immediate fan favorite. Warm, funny, chaotic in an endearing way. The foil, the one who didn't seem to take anything too seriously. But the Aspen situation, and now Rena's memoir, have raised a different question. Is Kathy Hilton the most powerful and protected woman in the entire Bravo ecosystem? Her husband, Rick Hilton, is the son of Baron Hilton, heir to an enormous hotel fortune. Kathy has been described by former Hilton hotel staff as absolutely pushy, arrogant, condescending, and presumptuous. And yet, she remains one of the most beloved figures in the Housewives franchise. She admitted, smiling at Bravo 2025, that she stole and resold her sister's childhood acting earnings. And the audience laughed. That's the Kathy Hilton paradox. Everything she does, no matter how questionable, lands as comedy. But whether that's genuine charm or extraordinary brand management or both is genuinely unclear. What is clear is that Rena, who pushed back against the Hilton machine publicly and loudly, ended up leaving the show. Kathy stayed. Kathy was welcomed back as a friend for season 15, and Rena is writing a memoir to get her version of events on record because she apparently couldn't get it on screen. The dark truth about the Richards sisters isn't one secret, it's a system. A system built by a woman who died over 20 years ago and is still running, still producing consequences, still generating drama for a Bravo audience that has no idea how deep the roots go. Kim is in recovery again. Kyle is rebuilding alone for the first time. Kathy is, as always, protected. And somewhere in between all of that, three women who were little girls performing for their mother's approval are still in different ways performing. The cameras love them for it. But the truth is, none of them ever had a choice. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to see the whole picture, not just the limo fight and the confessionals. The real story has always been bigger than the show.